I'm excited to have on the Nerds of Color an old friend. It's been a few years since we last saw each other, but she is totally blowing up now. You know her from Wonder Woman, Zack Snyder's Justice League. In a few weeks, she's going to be murdering zombies in Army of the Dead, which is actually getting a theatrical release now on May 14th. Please welcome to the Nerds of Color, Samantha Wynn.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. You are a triple threat is not enough. You're a martial artist, a stunt performer, Themysciran Amazon, zombie hunter. Like you're everything, Samantha.
Oh, thank you. And it's all fraudulent. I am all of those things and none of those things at the same time.
Well, you are a dope martial artist. Let's not sell yourself short there. I want to get into a little bit like what made. I know you've been practicing martial arts since you were like could barely walk. What has been the greatest lesson you've learned from being a martial artist?
I think that one for me is easy. I've thought about this a lot, and I think my work ethic is probably the most important thing I learned from that. I think when it's ingrained in you at a very young age to show up at a certain place at a certain time and put in a certain amount of effort and you get a certain amount of results from it, it becomes habit to, okay, if I want to see results, I have to do X, Y, Z. And you just have to find out what that X, Y, Z is, depending on what it is you're after. But I'm very used to that process. And so I think any physical kind of sport develops a healthy sense of what you can expect for your reward given the effort you put in, because you're not going to build muscle if you're not lifting weights. You're not going to get your cardio better if you're not running and training it. So I guess when I bring it to my career and professional life, I kind of apply those same rules. I don't expect to get things unless I'm putting in the effort and doing the training for it.
Right. And did you ever think you wanted to take that, skill set and bring it to say like Hollywood and movies? Like, was that, when you were training, when you were a teenager, were you thinking like one day I'm going to be a stunt performer, or was it just like how did that transition happen? How did you know, like, I'm actually going to apply this to like the film world?
Well, I can't say exactly what age. Very young, though. I always knew I wanted to be an actress and I wanted to be like Jackie Chan and Jet Li. So as far as I can remember, that was very much my childhood dream that I have the fortune of kind of living out right now, which is still like just stupid to me. But yeah, when I was doing jujitsu probably before I had that realization, just because my mom was a black belt, my brothers were in it. That was just me being born into it, I feel like.
Right.
But there was a conscious decision around 10, 11 to switch to wushu, which was a Chinese performance martial art. And the reasoning behind that very much was because I wanted to get to work in action films and I wanted to aspire to be like Jet Li and Jackie Chan. And so Jet Li does wushu, I should do wushu. And so that is where that decision came from. And kind of everything since then, all the classes I took, I was in acting classes, I was in dance and singing and martial arts all at the same time. It was with the goal of being a performer. And I didn't know what that path would look like because I knew I lived in Canada and I'd have to immigrate to
Right.
the US. And so I'd have to be special in some way. But
And then
yeah,
back then it was like, it wasn't even thought of like, because now like everybody's going back to Canada to shoot everything. You know what I mean? So like
I
you didn't
know.
have to move to Hollywood. You could have just stayed there and just waited a few more years, I guess.
I know, it's such a weird dynamic. They say you have to move to LA in order to work back at home. And for me, I did find that was true. So I don't
Right.
know. Who knows? It's still a mystery to me. I'm figuring it out as I go.
So one of the things I've always been an advocate for being Chinese American is for Asian American actors in particular to not be shy of martial arts genres, right? Like, and it's only been in the last few years where like I think Asian Americans are starting to embrace, like a few weeks ago we got the Shang-Chi trailer and Kung Fu's on the CW, and Mortal Kombat, which you are very familiar with that world. And as someone who is a martial artist, I've always felt the problem with the martial artist stereotype is that Asian people were never allowed, at least in the West, to be like fully human and do martial arts, right? Just again, talk about your love of martial arts and how like we're seeing a shift from being an Asian American, Asian Canadian in your case, and embracing that part of what is a very distinct part of Chinese and Asian culture, and kind of almost like reclaiming it for ourselves again.
Mm-hmm. I think in the last or in the previous couple decades, I could see how that kind of fear or worry about embracing too many martial arts roles could cultivate, because I think storytelling was leaning in a certain direction where if you were in a role to where you were a kung fu master, there were so many other stereotypes added onto it. Like you probably owned a Chinese restaurant, you probably had an accent, there were all of these other kind of traits put onto you. And so I could see the hesitance around that. I do feel like nowadays, even if a role for an Asian American has to do with martial arts, it feels much more filled out. And it could even be the lead of a series, like in Kung Fu.
Right.
So it is a very filled out character. There's an emotional journey, there's relationships. There are all the things that make you human and not just a stereotype of a restaurant owner. And so I think it's something to be embraced again. And it's it's hard for me to say differently because I am Chinese and I do Chinese martial arts, but it's the national sport in China. And I think kind of like in Canada, hockey is a rite of passage. In China, wushu is a rite of passage. And that's nothing that we have to hide or force into the stereotype of who we are. It is an important part of the culture and perhaps has to do with why, I mean, China is thriving. Maybe some of that work ethic came from their studying wushu at a young age as well. Who knows? But I think it carries a lot of benefits with it.
I think that's exactly right. You know, as you said, a lot of times I think the reason why it was always a problem is that like they would cast the Asian person to get beat up
Mhm.
typically by the white protagonist who's also really good at martial arts, right? Like it's like, you know, you think of like superheroes, Batman, Green Arrow, they're like martial artists, but they also get to be fully realized humans who
Mhm.
tend to like learn from a Chinese master, beat up a bunch of Chinese people, and that's why we want to shy away from it. But to your point, the fact that like the lead roles can be Asian and Asian American doing martial arts, I think that's a huge leap from where we were. And I think I'm so happy that people are starting to embrace that and not shy away from that anymore.
I mean, the perfect example really is Kung Fu because you look at what it was prior, which was David Carradine was the lead for it. Now we have a Asian American young woman who studied in China, and it's I don't know if she really studied in the story, but
Right.
um, yeah, we've certainly come a long way. And I think another example of that from working in the stunt community during a lot of those years, you ended up knowing all of the other Asian American performers because we were always put in scenes where it's like, oh, a fight breaks out in Chinatown. And so you see the same people show up for the same fights on different films. And you don't really get to meet a lot of the other communities. I
Mhm.
didn't get to meet so many other working people in different ethnicities, unfortunately. I feel like I really knew the Asian community very well because there were so many of those kinds of Chinatown fight scenes. But not anymore. It's been a while since I've heard a call for anything like that.
That's awesome. I want, you know, talking about your career as a stunt performer, you know, we're a few weeks removed from the Oscars now. When do you think we'll ever get a stunt category at the Oscars? Because I think that's the unsung heroes of so many of the films that we love are the performers who are doing the stunts and putting their bodies at risk for our entertainment. Like, do you feel like the stunt community gets enough respect from the industry writ large?
I would have a hard time answering it because I don't like putting myself up there. But now that I feel like I'm in the acting world, I would like to speak to that.
Yeah.
And absolutely, I think on my past show, Army of the Dead was a perfect example. Most of the athleticism was coming from the stunt performers, not actors. And everything that was actually like painful or dangerous, it was very much their doing. And so it is a very underappreciated department, and especially with the trend of films being so comic book driven, so fantastical, there's all this room for these amazing stunts. And in the last 10 years, we've seen so much of it. Jumping off of 80-story buildings, we almost take for granted now because we see it so frequently. But there is a person on that wire, and they are making a very big risk for our entertainment. And so I think it's the least that we could do for them. As to when that will happen, I don't know. I'm not a part of the committees involved with making those decisions, but I do want to do my part in encouraging and pushing for that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love the fact that, the community itself is I think pretty tight knit, as you said. Like, you kind of, it's the same people doing the same, uh, jobs, because, as you said, so much of Hollywood now is kind of geared towards these big action stunts, and you kind
Mhm.
of, and I think, you, if you ask the stars, right, if you ask the actors, like you said, now that you're in the more in the acting world, I think they probably respect their stunt doubles more than anyone else, right? Because they know, like, we see what you're doing, like, up close, and are able to kind of like understand, like, wow, because there's a bit of a fetish, right, for like act. You mentioned Jackie Chan. He's kind of the ultimate of like actors, like, well, I did all of my own stunts, and that's great, but like, I think at the same time it almost diminishes, to me at least, like, the work that goes into like being a stunt performer.
I think it totally does. And I've had the fortune of very amazing actresses I've doubled who have always given credit and kudos and encouragement or mentioned me in interviews. I think the trend is changing, but I think that very much used to be the way, which is why I loved Once Upon a Time in Hollywood so much, because it really told that story. And especially for actors and stunt performers that work together on several films a lot, you do end up with a close friendship and a kind of relationship that isn't seen on camera because you're not really on camera together. So I think the public forgets the importance or the involvement of the stunt double because they're not seeing it. If you do see it, you're not doing your job right as a stunt double.
Right.
So it's an easily looked over category, but I do think that films like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood are helping the cause, and you know, directors like Zack who have given stunt performers like myself a chance, and Quentin Tarantino with Zoe Bell. I think it's moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Zach, because I think your first time working with him was as Jenna Malone's double in Sucker Punch. Was that your first time being part of the Zack Snyder menagerie?
It really was. It was an amazing experience, and I wish I had the lens that I do now so I could appreciate it even more. I mean, I still appreciate it so much, but now I see all the risks and all of the things that just unprecedented opportunities that I was given that I wish I knew how special they were at the time.
Because I mean, if just the arc of your just collaborations with Zach, right? Like, it started out in Sucker Punch, you were doubled for Jenna Malone, and then you were cast as Feora's double in Man of Steel, but he also gave you a role as like a Kryptonian warrior in the background, which was kind of like an evolution of where you were in Sucker Punch. Of course, you became a
Yeah.
Themysciran Amazonian warrior, Ubia, right? Did I get it right?
Yes.
In Wonder Woman and Justice League. And now you're a fully fledged zombie hunter Chambers in Army of the Dead. Talk about the evolution of just what it's like being part of the larger Snyderverse, whether it's restored or not, but the larger Snyderverse beyond just Justice League, right? From Sucker Punch to Army of the Dead, and what it's been like collaborating with Zach over the last almost decade.
Well, I've told, I think it was Debbie this recently, Debbie Snyder, that they've continually given me the most exciting moments of my life, but over and over and over and over, because the evolution has been so steady. Like every job seems to be, and then this, and then this, and it's always a slightly bigger opportunity that I just get so excited and over the moon every single time, and it still baffles me because I think there are so many actors who you never really know if you're going to work again, and you never really know if that's going to be it. You're not entitled to anything. Once you're done a job, you're done that job, and you're kind of, at the mercy of the universe again.
On to
And
the next one, right?
exactly. And so it, it's just such a special experience that they've given me the opportunity over and over and over again. And I can't speak for them as to why they've allowed me to grow and eventually become Chambers, like you said, but I'm sure as heck grateful for it. Yeah, I really can't speak to that, but it's been I've learned so much along the way, I think is the thing I'd like to hit on that. Um, because I've been allowed to experience different roles as a stunt double, then as stunt doubling, but also a small part, and then as just an Amazonian, not to do with stunts anymore, and then my first movie premiere, I feel like it allowed me to grow at a slow and steady pace to where I got to learn more and take in the environment and talk to people and kind of settle myself in each role. So nothing was so shocking and intimidating. Because I think if it went from 0 to 100, I just have no idea what that would feel like. My mind would be blown.
Yeah. No, I mean, let's talk about Army of the Dead for a little bit because, you know, it's coming out. I haven't seen it yet, so, you know, Netflix, what's up with the screener? But from what I have seen, I mean, it's totally exciting. One, and you know, we talked about representation earlier. What I find awesome about it is you mentioned there's an Asian American lead, Dave Bautista, right? And like Hiroyuki Sanada's in it, you're in it. It's like a very diverse cast, which is amazing. And Zach, you know, to his credit, has always put diversity at the front of a lot of his films. And you know, but again, to have like Dave Bautista be like the main guy, I think is totally cool. He's one of my favorite actors in the world. What has it been like working with Dave and then kind of like being part of this like really diverse cast, an inclusive cast, and being, you know, an Asian American performer, and kind of like knowing like, wow, I'm in a film that, like, you know, Gold Open, like Asian American Heritage Month, like
Yeah,
let's do it, right?
best month. Yeah. Well, working with Dave, I think you'd be hard pressed to find anyone who didn't enjoy working with him, who doesn't enjoy working with him. He really is just such a lovely person. And once you, at least for me, once you get over the fear of approaching someone so massive and intimidating looking, he is a gentle giant. He's an intellect, and he is not soft spoken, but he's not loud and boisterous. He's very easy to have a conversation with. And even though you might look at his Instagram and see flashy things, it's a funny contradiction, because he's not a flashy, boisterous personality. He is very low key. So it's kind of funny that that's his style, because it doesn't match his personality at all to me. But he was just such a great leader for everyone too, because he's such a grounded person, and he's an artist. And I think however he's lived his life, he's grown to be this very genuine, giving, understanding person. And so whenever you have a cast like we did that is so diverse from all over the globe, he was a perfect person to kind of bring us all together and be that grounding rock. So it was amazing working with him. Now on to the rest of the cast. Oh my God, did we have a blast. I didn't know what to expect, because, you know, like you said, we're all from different countries. We're so diverse. Maybe our senses of humor wouldn't translate. Maybe our cultures would clash, or remarks would be taken not how they're intended, kind of thing. But we all got along from the get-go. And I think it's a beautiful thing how Netflix is such a global brand, and they have their own platforms for the different countries, because I think the cast was really a reflection of that. We have, you know, our German actor, we have our Indian actress, French actress, UK actress, Canadian, American. And then when it comes to ethnicities, all over the place, like Dave, Greek, Filipino, Chinese, Canadian, Japanese, German, they're African American, there's everything in there. And I think it's a beautiful thing, because I think everyone watching will be able to connect with at least one of those characters, and they're all done justice. It's not just a show of, oh, look, we're diverse, but everyone really has their moment and their purpose in the film too. So it's very much respected. And we all felt that reading it, we all felt it on set, and it made for a really special experience.
Like it's important that you get to play individuals, right? Like you don't want to just be like, I'm just representing my race, right? Like you want to be like whatever ticks and idiosyncrasies that character has, you want to be able to like inhabit that, right? You don't want to just be like, I'm just the Chinese Canadian representative, right? Like, no, I'm Chambers. I'm just like badass. Like from what I can tell, again, I've only seen the trailers and the posters, but like, you know, talk to me a little bit about Chambers then. Like what was it like for you to play her, and then what does she kind of bring to the team and bring to the film?
Well, without getting too spoilery, she
Sure.
is the ride or die buddy of Guzman. And what I actually really enjoyed about it was that the relationship life of Chambers was a platonic friendship. Like Chambers could be a badass and cool, but she can still wear hoop earrings and have like necklaces and have her feminine side. And she can be an emotional person and have relationships with other characters, but it doesn't have to be romantic just because she's, you know, a girl.
Right.
She's a very fleshed out human, and I think she certainly has her moment too. And it was a lot of fun. Um, I guess I'll say getting to. I think she's a modern kind of woman as well, and so I really liked being a part of that story and telling her story and being on that side of the perspective. That's all I'll say about it. I'm really proud of her as a character, and I admire her. So I'm glad I got to embody her and hopefully take pieces of it for myself in life.
Yeah, no. Well, yeah, of course, I don't want to get into too spoilery territory. We'll ask you this though about Chambers. What was it like when you saw Zach revealed like your own character poster? This is, I think, is the first in your career, right, where you get your own kind of like focused, Chambers gets her own poster, alongside the rest of the cast. Like, what was that feeling like for you? As we say, coming from like, doubling for Jenna Malone to now you have your own character poster for this huge blockbuster. Like, and it's not just like a Netflix movie, right? Like, it's going to be, I think, the largest, widest released Netflix movie ever. I think it's going to hit 600 screens on May 14th. So, like, what is it like for you to be like, essentially your own superhero poster, right? Alongside all of the other characters you've played.
Well, it's quite literally my lifelong childhood dream come true, and I've been working at it for so many years too. So it's I would get emotional talking about it. I did get to see it a few months ago because they're on top of it. They've been ready with everything, just waiting to release. So it gives me so much confidence too. They've really been at it. But yeah, so I've gotten to see it a couple months ago before release, and I think I stared at it straight for like 3 days. I'm not going to lie or play it cool. I was very excited about it. And it really made me reflect on the moment when I saw Rocket's character poster for Sucker Punch, because like you said, that was the first Zack movie I worked on. And I remember thinking how beautiful the artwork was and how each character, you could really get a sense of them in the posters, and how I was so happy for Jenna and how much I admired them too for everything they'd done in their careers. I'm like, wow, it must be such a surreal feeling to just see a poster and it's just you on it. And especially knowing Jenna, because she's been acting for so long, she's been at it a very long time too. Like what a full circle moment, or what an accomplishment that must feel like. And so I was reflecting on that when I saw my own character poster, and sure enough, people started retweeting pictures of Jenna's Sucker Punch picture, comparing artwork and like how beautiful they were. And I was like, whoa. I just felt so touched and special, and I'm really grateful to be a part of it.
No, I mean, I'm very excited for you because, like I said,
Well,
Army of the Dead.
about it.
Army of the Dead looks amazing. I did want to ask, I think it's been in the, in production for a while, but did you have to shoot it all during the pandemic, or were you all done with photography before the pandemic?
We were done with principal photography before the pandemic. So I think we wrapped in the October prior, and then during post-production, we know some things came up that warranted certain reshoots, but it was only Tig, and then I think Anna had to join her for a scene, but the rest of us didn't have to shoot during the pandemic for it. So it was funny because we did Justice Con a few weeks ago, or a couple, maybe
well, it's okay. In the pandemic, a month feels like a year, so it's all good.
It's very true. And we were all on the same panel together, but for most of us, we were actually meeting Tig for the first time on that panel. So she totally played into it, because everything we talked about, she's like, oh, I remember that. You're good.
Yeah, she was definitely the breakout star of that trailer. And like, I'm a big fan of Tig Notaros too, so I'm excited that she was able to be inserted and seamlessly. So like the wizards that Zack works with when it comes to like CGI is bar none. And then that's evident with the Justice League film. And let's talk about, you see my background, I can't not talk to you about being part of the DCEU, and I said you're the only Kryptonian Themysciran, I think, right? Like, there's not a lot of Amazons who are also Kryptonians. And so what was it? I mean, I don't know. Were you a huge like superhero fan growing up as well? I know you liked Jackie Chan and Jet Li, but did you also like Superman and Batman growing up as well?
I did. I mean, I played with them in the bathtub as a kid. But when it comes to like having read all of the comics, I'm sure there are a lot of other people that know more than me. But I've always been a fan. Yes.
So what was it like to be one in a Superman movie, and then two, like to put on, because as you know, the Kryptonian armor is one thing, but like the Wonder Woman armor, the Themysciran Amazon armor, that's like a whole other thing. What was it like for you to like put those costumes on and like, as you said, kind of become those toys that you played with when you were a kid?
I mean, you would think after so many films that it would, lose its luster, but no, I feel like a child every single time. And I probably shouldn't say, but sneaking away, trying to get like pictures just to remember the moment by, even though I'm not supposed to be taking pictures, but they sit harmlessly for my own eyes. But yeah, it really, you really realize the impact that these characters have on you as a kid, because yeah, I wasn't, sitting and reading every single comic, but the story of Superman and that character, even just that logo, I think is such a big part of almost all of our childhood that, for instance, the first time I saw Henry don the cape, I was with a room full of us, and it was all of us seeing him in it for the first time. And it was magical. It felt like we were a part of history. It felt like we were literally a part of Superman's history, not Henry's, not Man of Steel or the movie, but it felt like we are part of Superman's history.
Right.
And
Part of that legacy.
exactly. And so that's what it felt like for me in the Themysciran costume. It was being the Amazonian warrior that I'd see in like comic images, and I'd see Wonder Woman more, but I'd still seen artwork of Themyscirans and everything. And
Sure.
it was being a part of that legacy. And so Ubia was a real comic character in it, and I got to be the first to embody her. So it was a gift and an honor, and it makes you kind of want to live up to it in your everyday life. At least for me, I feel like if I'm for young kids, if my face is the face of a Themysciran and they can't quite differentiate between reality and fantasy yet, then I feel an obligation to myself and be a good example for them. So I kind of like that kind of pressure as well. I love kids. I love helping people. And so if I get to be a part of shaping the way they see their mentors and shaping who they, I guess, desire to
grow
be
up
when
to
they
be,
grow up,
yeah.
yeah, then I embrace it.
That's the importance of representation ultimately, right? It's to show people, like, again, like people of color can be fully fleshed out human beings and people to aspire to. And I think that's an important thing to see, talking about diversity, like how diverse the Themyscirans were in Wonder Woman and Justice League, right? Like you see that they're all shades, they're all ethnicities, but they're all also powerful and, different shapes. Like it's not just one type of person. And I think that's what is, again, really important about what representation means. It's not just, putting a face out there, but it's like, what does this mean to like a child who's watching it for the first time?
Little girls and women saying afterwards, oh my God, there were these kinds of Amazons, these kinds of Amazons. I kind of looked like that one. Oh my God, I'm so glad that they went with all these different kinds of people that we actually see. This is our reality. So it made it feel more attainable to be that kind of woman, to be strong and fierce like that. You don't have to look a certain way to be that. You could be just who you are and be special.
Yeah. So no, I think you've done an amazing job kind of embodying these, iconic characters. I mean, I think your first role ever, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, was as another iconic character, Kitana, in the Mortal Kombat series, the Legacy series. One, did you ever get a chance to watch the new Mortal Kombat? And two, if Kitana comes back in part two, would you? Because you already worked with Hiroyuki Sanada, like you've worked with Scorpion. Like, would you want to, take the fans out of storage?
Absolutely. I mean, who wouldn't want to be a part of Kitana's story? And luckily I have gotten to prior, but absolutely. And I did see the recent film too. And what I love all of the Mortal Kombat characters so much. I'm really happy that they really leaned into the Mortal Kombat world so heavily in like, no, this is a Mortal Kombat movie. We will do the things, the shink, everything that fans really love about it. And it felt like I was watching a piece of my childhood. So and the actors, Hiroyuki Sanada is amazing. Obviously, I'm a tad obsessed with him, so I love it just for that.
Right.
Got a selfie with him during our stuff in Army of the Dead, so I'm definitely posting that when it comes out. But I saw the Easter egg for it. I saw the fans.
The fan in the background. Mm.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's my fan.
I know, right?
Was that your first role? Or was I correct there? Or...
You know,
I feel like that's the first time I saw you. So I mean, at least in my world, that was your first role.
Yeah, it was definitely my first big role. I mean, I did a bunch of toy commercials when I was a kid, so I don't know if those count or not. But this was my first significant role where a larger audience actually did. I think when it released, it had like over 60 million views, which was the most at that time.
Right.
Web series. So yeah, it was my first role of note.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's down in like YouTube history as one of like the biggest. Like back then, before everyone was on YouTube, that was the thing that drew a lot of people to YouTube, at least. So
I started making content. I've seen so many cosplay outfits for that version of the costume since then, and I'm like, what?
So I speaking of the web films and short films, I did want to talk to you about a short film that you did recently called Unwelcome. Can you talk to our viewers about what that is and why you wanted to share that cast and that film with the rest of the world?
Yes. So when it started out, it was a pandemic and we were kind of scrambling and getting antsy, I think like everyone else, and just wanting to shoot something. And so we had a brainstorming session between Don Shahab, one of the directors, and myself. And we were just trying to come up with the story. And the more we worked off of each other, and then this happens, and then this happens, the more we kind of fell in love with A, the message we were trying to send, and B, the story itself, which was super fun. And the plot twist that happens in it was an absolute joy, because filming everything prior, we knew what was coming. And so it was just a fun experience for us. But the reason that we made it was because we wanted to, of course, shed a light on an important topic, which is the tagline itself: complicity has consequences, or complicity is just as guilty, is one of the lines in it. So if we were to approach it from just that angle, I feel like you kind of lose the viewers who, in a pandemic, are tired of being berated with all of these things happening in the world and just need escapism, which is why we watch films sometimes. So we thought if we approached it from an angle of, okay, let's twist it, let's hit people with a completely new genre and have it be unexpected and have it be something where they can escape, but the message is still seeping in. And so that was the reason we made it, to kind of bring that message to an audience of people who might not otherwise have the energy to be watching something like that right now. And so it kind of hit the best of both worlds. We got a solid, hopefully resonating message, but also a super fun genre. It's very fun to watch, and I can't give away the genre because that's the huge twist. So everyone will just have to watch to find out.
Yeah, I think I almost said it when I was describing it. I was like, maybe I shouldn't say it's a blah 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 genre, because it is a surprise when it comes out. I'll end with this, since we talk about genre. Most of the stuff you've been in, at least the wide release stuff, have been very genres. Video game adaptation, superheroes, zombie movies. But you were also, as you said, like, you're an actor, and I think you've done some stage work. I think you were in an Arthur Miller play. Like, when it comes to like, the action heavy stuff or like the really dramatic stuff, which do you prefer? And feel free to say, actually, I want to do comedy. Like, what's the genre you want to explore more going forward at post Army of the Dead?
I think the answer that I have would be one fairly stereotypical, and that's I want to do it all. That's why I'm an actress, because you do a project and then when you move on to the next, it's a totally different world and a different character. And so I would like to be able to play and dance in all of them. I would love to be a part of a comedy like you just. That's something that's probably a genre more true to my everyday personality. I do not walk around with a concealed carry, ready to slay people at any moment and have a broadsword in my, I do have a broadsword in my car right now, but that's unrelated. But
That's some comedy like gold right there, probably, you know.
I know you get pulled over and you have a broadsword in your car. But I would like
Hate
to
when that happens.
Yeah, I do think like you said, I've lived in this comic book, fantasy, video game kind of world. And I think that's one that a lot of actors on the other side of the spectrum who are doing film set like in heavy realism and it's drama and it's very almost like you could be watching it real time. It's real life. They're very opposite ends of the spectrum. And so I feel like once you've done too much here, you really crave that fun fantasy where kids watch you and kids admire you and you get to tell fun stories and have superpowers and cool costumes. And on the flip side, once you do so much of that, like you want to go back to being a human for a bit and get to experience that. So that's what Unwelcome started out as, but I guess we did just keep going and going and going until it did become a little bit fantasy. Even
yeah, I guess that's spoilery enough, right? Without really giving it away.
Yes, but yeah, I want to do everything. So and I will at some point, but I'm not complaining where I'm at right now.
Because... no, I was about to say the world is your oyster, Samantha, and you're already there. I feel like, I mean, you're blowing up, and I'm so happy that you are, because I'm a huge fan, as you know, and just to see your career trajectory, take off to the moon, as it were, and here you are, like I said, a few days out from the biggest Netflix movie ever made, because they're putting it in like 600 screens, and that's amazing. It's so nice to be able to go. I'm actually going to go see it in the theater because. Why not? I don't need to wait for it to come out on Netflix a week later. I'll check it out in the theater, because I think, again, one, we need to go back to theaters. Like, we're all vaccinated now, and two, like, we need more movies like this so that the people can celebrate your career and Zach's career and Dave's career, and I'm sure, like, you're kind of just being part of the Zack Snyder verse. You have this huge fan base that's rooting for you as well. So, congrats to everything that you've done, Samantha, and like I said, the future is still bright.
Thank you. Well, I can't wait to catch up with you again after more adventures and see where we're both at.
Hopefully not 4 or 5 years, right? Let's do it a lot sooner. Well, you can catch Samantha right now on HBO Max and Zack Snyder's Justice League on May 14th in theaters, and on May 21st on Netflix in Army of the Dead as Chambers. Thank you so much, Samantha, for being on the Nerds of Color.
Thank you.
All right.
Culture with a different perspective. Watch it on your screen, hit play, so check this.